Hi, this is Horace, and we're here to continue our studies in the book of Genesis. And we're in Genesis chapter 1, and I'll be reading from verse 7 through 13. And it says, "And God made the firmament and divided the waters which were under the firmament from the waters which were above the firmament. And it was so. And God called the firmament heaven. And the evening and the morning were the second day. And God said, Let the waters under the heaven be gathered together unto one place, and let the dry land appear. And it was so. And God called the dry land earth, and the gathering together of the waters called he seas. And God saw that it was good. And God said, Let the earth bring forth grass, the herb yielding seed, and the fruit trees yielding fruits after his kind, whose seed is in itself upon the earth. And it was so. And the earth brought forth grass and herbs yielding seed after his kind, and the tree yielding fruit, whose seed was in itself after his kind. And God saw that it was good. And the evening and the morning were the third day." Last week we looked at the whole point of the firmament, the waters dividing, God dividing the waters from the waters in the heavens and the waters here on earth. And I explained to you that the waters in the heaven were like the water surrounding the earth, just like in a greenhouse effect. And the water on the earth, of course, was much less than what it is today. And what it means when the water was surrounding the earth, it means that, as we will see in chapter 2, it says it never rained, because a mist would come out of the earth and water the whole earth. And so this was like the greenhouse effect. And that have a whole lot of implication later, because we will see that trees will grow really tall, real giant, with thick trunks, and animals will grow strong and live longer and will grow bigger. Dinosaurs, for example, which was only once in an era, will become greater and taller and bigger. And for people who know about reptiles, the longer they live, the bigger they get. About us humans, the longer we live, the older we get, the weaker we get, and we eventually die. We're not like these reptiles. And so the earth was of a uniform temperature in the sense that the North Pole, the equator, and the South Pole were of the same temperature. And as I said, when the scientists back in the 80s, they went and they dug down the permafrost and the North and the South Poles, they found grass. And that means that at one point it was green. Just as the Bible said, it was like a greenhouse. The weather was stable. There were no hurricanes, earthquakes, storms, or anything like that, like what we have today. None of those things. Because everything was beautiful, perfectly set within a greenhouse effect. And people could live longer, as I said. And the animals could live longer because the harmful rays, the cosmic rays that would come from outer space and the sun, they would be absorbed in the water above the earth. So people could live long, and there were very few diseases, very few sicknesses, because of the protection that the earth had by the water. And so it says God made the firmament, and he called it the heavens. And that is the stretch out space between the water in the firmament, the greenhouse effect water above the earth, and the space from the ground up. And so, as it says, the evening and the morning was were the second day. God begins his day in the evening. He begins his work in the evening. And it says in verse 9, as I also pointed out in verse 6 and 7, that God said, let there be. He gave the command. And when he gave the command, that God made the firmament. In other words, God obeyed the command. We have seen that when God said, that's the Father giving his command. And when God made, that's Jesus doing the will of the Father. As we have seen in the book of Hebrews, in the book of St. John chapter 1, in the beginning was the Word. Nothing was made, nothing came into existence without Jesus. Through him, God made the world. And here we see him as God making the world. And in verse 9, he went on to say, God gave the command again. The Father, let the waters under the heaven gather together in one place, and let their dry land came out. In other words, the earth came out of water. It was like it's born out of the water. So God created called the dry land out of the water, as the book of 2 Peter chapter 3 talks about the earth coming out of water, and later on were destroyed by water. And so he gathered the waters together, and you will have land coming up. There were more land today on the earth than it is today. In those days, there were more lands all over the place. The continents were bigger. The islands were much bigger. In fact, there were more bridges between lands today than there are today. For example, they had just found that there was a land bridge between France and Britain in the English Channel there. And that they realized that the sea came over that land bridge and cut off traveling for people. So now people had to take boats or ship or plane or the underground train over from Britain to Europe. So God made the land and all those things that you see. It's interesting, even though it said that God made the land, it didn't say anything about mountains or hills. It didn't say much about that. It just said land. God made the land. And he went on to say, when God made the land, that he divided the land from the sea. The sea today, what we have oceans. They didn't have as much oceans as we today. And so, before the day was done, what the Lord did, it says, God said, let the earth bring forth grass. You see, that's the interesting thing about the earth. There's life in the earth. It doesn't make any difference where you go. Once there is water on the land, bang, you start seeing grass and herbs and bushes start growing up, because God created a living earth. The earth is a living thing. It has life in it. And so he called forth the herbs from out of the land, and he gave it specific descriptions, specific ordinance as to the herbs and the trees. And the herbs and the trees must have seed in them and fruits from the trees. And in the fruits of the trees, there will be seed. And in the seed of the fruits of the tree, there will be another tree inside. And it perpetuates itself for all throughout time. In other words, an apple tree that was made at the beginning of time is still the same type of apple tree that we have today, because that's how God designed it. The apple tree did not evolve from another tree, or like a pear tree or whatever, they were distinct fruits with seed in them, and inside those seeds were trees, as it is today. Thank you. We'll continue our study in the next segment of Genesis chapter 1.